If God is all powerful and all good, then why does evil exist? This question has tormented the mankind for thousands and thousands of years. From the ancient philosophers to modern spiritual seekers, each of us at some point in time ask this question. But what if I told you that the ancient Advaita Vedanta has an answer to this question, which is so profound that it completely changes your perspective on reality? According to this ancient tradition, there is no evil at all. Not just this, but there is no good either. Now, this might be really difficult for your mind to grasp. There seems to be so much of evil in this world. How can there be no good or no evil? The terrorism, the war, the killing of each other, are these things not evil? And helping each other, loving each other, charity and service, are these things not good? Now, this is an obvious question that we come to. But if you can be patient and if you can give me some time, I will promise you that your lifelong curiosity on if God exists, why does evil exist, will come to an end by the end of this video through logic and also through an interesting story from the Purana. Now, to understand this, we must understand an ancient framework to look at reality. We need to look at the perspective of Advaita Vedanta to understand reality. Most of us grow up believing that good and evil are two separate forces fighting against each other. We see this battle everywhere, in the movies, in news stories, in our own daily struggles. Good people fight bad people, light battles darkness, heroes defeat villains. This way of thinking feels natural because we experience it constantly in our lives. Not just this, the traditional Western religions often explain evil as divine punishment for our sins or as tests that God gives us to make us stronger. These explanations create more questions than they answer. They make God seem distant or harsh, and they leave us confused about the nature of reality itself. Now, Advaita Vedanta presents a completely different picture. Vedanta says there is no good, there is no evil, but there is Vidya and there is Avidya. There is wisdom and there is ignorance. This is a key statement for us to begin this understanding. That is, there is wisdom and there is ignorance, not good and evil. What we call evil is simply the absence of understanding, like darkness being the absence of light. Vedanta reveals that both good and evil are aspects of Maya, temporary illusions that mask the true nature of reality. This perspective doesn't just answer the question, it transforms everything you thought you knew. This means evil doesn't exist at all, not as a force, not as an entity, not as anything that is real. Now, I understand that it is very difficult to grasp this. There is so much of violence, there is so much of apparent evil around us. Now, I can understand this, but Vedanta is pointing towards the deeper aspect of reality. It is pointing towards the essence of reality. If we uncover that, we will understand everything about life and what this reality actually is. Now, let's consider this example. Imagine that there is a room and that room is filled with light that is coming from a bulb. Now, when you switch off that bulb, immediately darkness swallows the room and the entire room becomes dark. But this darkness doesn't have any substance to it. Darkness is nothing but the absence of light. Darkness is not a real thing. When you bring a candle into this dark room, the darkness doesn't fight the light. It simply disappears because it never existed as a separate thing. Now, evil works in the similar way. What we call evil today, in the form of killing, wars, terrorism and so on, is simply the absence of wisdom, and it is simply the ignorance of the essence of reality. Now, I want to be very clear here that we are not trying to justify the evil in this world. What we are discussing is a deeper exploration of reality. Of course, people who indulge in these activities, who indulge in these evil things, should be encountered in the right way and they need to be eliminated from society. That stance must be very clear at this dimension. But what we are discussing is the philosophical exploration of what evil actually is beyond our traditional understanding. When someone commits violence, they are ignorant of the truth that harming others means harming themselves. When someone steals or lies, they don't understand that their actions create suffering for everyone, including themselves. We don't understand as a society the harmony between different things in this world. We do not understand that everything is one in essence, and we do not understand what consciousness is and what God is. And the funniest thing is, the most destructive things we do, the most evil things we do it in the name of God, in the name of religion, which is supposed to be the force for good and for spiritual evolution. We can bring this understanding to suffering as well. Suffering is not a real thing from the absolute perspective. Even suffering happens because of ignorance. We don't understand who we are, we don't understand the nature of our reality, and that is why we suffer. Evil, suffering, and all negative things is simply the absence of light, the absence of wisdom. Both good and evil are the aspects of Maya, the temporary illusion that covers the ultimate reality. Within this dimension of Maya, within the simulation of Maya, we perceive everything through the lens of duality. Good, bad, right, wrong, happiness and suffering. There is always two things. There are always polarities. But when we transcend this dimension of duality through wisdom, that is when we see unity. We only see consciousness. We only see God there. We only see light, not the darkness. Real wisdom dissolves illusions. When we understand our true nature as consciousness, we naturally act with compassion and love because we recognize that we are all one in essence. When we understand we are one, we don't need external rules or laws to not be violent to each other. The ancient Bhagavad Gita teaches us that the good will never perish and the evil never exist. Now this concept becomes even more clear when we look at an example from the ancient Puranas. This is the story of Hiranyakashipu and his son Prahallada. The Puranas tell us about Hiranyakashipu, a demon king who spread terror across 3 worlds. This powerful Asura possessed great power and great capabilities. He conquered different worlds, he fought different wars, he even defeated different gods. And his goal and his aim in life was to defeat Lord Vishnu himself. He demanded that everyone should worship him instead of Narayana, instead of God. And he also inflicted a tremendous amount of suffering in this world. Now, when we look at him, we see that he represents pure evil. He is bad. This is the natural conclusion, isn't it? And then this Hiranyakashipu, this demon king, had a son. His son represented everything that was not him. His son was a sattvic person. He was extremely devoted to God, to Lord Vishnu, and he always worshipped divine. His pure heart and unwavering faith made him beloved by saints and sages. Now, this contrast cannot be more polarizing. The evil king and the righteous son. This represents evil and good. But this representation is only at a superficial level. Now, of course, at the physical dimension, ultimately this demon king was killed and destroyed by Lord Narasimha, an avatar of Mahavishnu himself. But the point of the story is not this. There is a hidden meaning behind this story. That is what we will uncover now. According to the Puranas, Hiranyakashipu was actually an incarnation of one of Vishnu's own devoted gatekeepers from Vaikunta, which is the dimension of God. This devoted being of Mahavishnu, who used to stay with Vishnu, who used to stay with God himself, was a victim of a temporary curse because of which he became Hiranyakashipu and he came down to earth. And once his temporary experience here came to an end, through Vishnu himself, he again went back to Lord Vishnu as his gatekeeper and as his devotee. Now, what does this story tell us? Hiranyakashipu's destructive actions stemmed from the spiritual amnesia that comes with birth, causing him to forget his true divine nature. This ignorance created the ego that drove his behavior. His actions caused real suffering, but they emerged from forgetting rather than from genuine evil intent. So he just forgot who he really was. He was one of the greatest devotees of God, but he just became ignorant of that fact, and he became the representation of the greatest evil on earth. So here, evil is not real and absolute like it seems, but it is simply a result of ignorance. This story shows us that apparent evil often comes from souls who have forgotten their divine essence. Hiranyakashipu represents the part of ourselves that identifies with the ego and separation. Prahalada represents our capacity for wisdom and devotion that remembers our divine connection. Both exist within us. And the story teaches us that even our worst impulses comes from ignorance. And the solution to everything is wisdom and knowledge. Now, the Vedantic explanation and the story of Purana does not excuse evil actions. Of course, for his evil actions, Hiranyakashipu was punished by Narayana. But these stories and these teachings point us towards something which is fundamental, that there is a root cause for evil. Even though evil is apparent, the suffering that it causes is real. So to solve that, we must go to the root cause. The root cause is ignorance, and the solution is wisdom. So this understanding transforms how we look at evil and good. The terrorists who are killing people are absolutely ignorant of how reality actually is and who they are in their essence. Of course, because of their ignorant actions, they will face the consequences. There is the law of karma that works at this dimension, which will create an immense amount of suffering to them in this dimension. But ultimately, what we seekers should understand here is that the solution to all the problems that are happening in this world is consciousness, is wisdom. Once we begin to understand what reality is and how everything is connected, then we can begin to build a new conscious world. That is our vision with the Advaita Conscious Society, to enable the consciousness movement and to build a conscious society. The ultimate solution that Vedanta offers to eliminate both evil and ignorance is the attainment of the infinite consciousness or Brahman. When we go to that point of Aham Brahmasmi, I am the infinite, which dissolves all illusion of separation, that is when true wisdom emerges, and that is when we are in light and we are with light. And practically think about this in your life. Just remember about a particular moment in life where you were extremely angry or you were extremely resentful about someone, but just a simple fact, which is wisdom about a particular situation, transform that anger and resentment into compassion and understanding.